I want to welcome all of you once again to this section of our research methods. Particularly, it is the entire research process for business analytics that you are going through. Today, we want to consider selecting a topic, identify the gaps. Now, if you have already selected your topics, you are probably wondering, why do I need this? But yesterday, one of you contacted me that he's not got a topic. Almost every day, people are telling me the same thing. That's one. Two, even if you have a topic, you need to know the gaps that you are trying to fill. And this whole seminar, this lecture will deeply go into how to create a gap, how to create a niche of a gap for yourself so that your work becomes enjoyable reading, enjoyable listening to. Yeah. So that's what we're going to do today. If you're a researcher, you have to determine the topic or the issue of study. And the last time I said it, but I want to reiterate that your topic should not be long. Don't make your topic more than 12 words. The shorter, the better, without loss of information. The shorter, the better. So make your research topic very short and not more than 12 words. You're going to learn how to select a topic and make it like that. Okay. All right, so what we are going to do basically is to come out with a topic. And at the end of the day, I will give you a topic. But I'll give you multiple topics, but I'll give you a precise and a concise gap of topics so that you will know how this thing is done. The reference material is always research made easy. So you can look at it by Boateng. Okay. So you have been told to do a research, but you don't even know what research you want to do. What is the first thing you have to do? Well, the first thing you have to do is to get into the literature. But what is the literature? The literature spans from quantum mechanics, from archaeology to zoology, from mathematics to statistics, from dance to theater, from aerodynamics to thermomolecular analytics. All of these are several areas. You got to identify which area. Even when it comes to business analytics, the topics are just flooded. So you need to comb into the literature. You need to do what is a literature review. Not necessarily writing it, but you need to do a literature review. Later, you will learn that you need to create a tabular taxonomy. How do you do that? What is a literature? The literature synthesizes all the resources and the materials with a strong relation to the topic that you have chosen. It describes the inside out. It critically evaluates and compares analysis of several other people's work. And you're able to get a sense of what is happening in the area. There is one key thing that is in the literature, and they normally will say things like direction for further research. As a direction for further research. So if you are the type who is looking for a topic, the moment you open the PDF document, you look for direction for further research or further research or further work. And when you type that and search for that, you will see that some of these papers are indicating further things that could be done. Okay, later on, you will learn a lot about cross-referencing and how that can help you also gain topics. So the literature is very focused on a particular question of area of interest. That is the literature. It's a synthesis of the work of other people. But why are you doing the literature review? Why do you have to do a literature review of your work? So that your research will have a strong theoretical base. Anytime you are building a building, You need a foundation so that it will not be shaky. Now, the literature review is actually made up of two parts, you will later learn. A theoretical part and an empirical part. The theoretical review will harness those theories that underpin your work. Theories are like the institutional theory, property rights theory, agency theory, information asymmetry theory, production theory, resource-based view of the firm, like theory of economics of scale. Several theories that have already been propounded that will be the cement, the foundation of your work. The literature review will help you to build that theoretical foundation. Now, why do you need a theory? The reason is because once you have a theoretical backing to the point you want to make, if your point is supported by a theory, it means that it's more believable because you have a backing. So the theory is like an authority upon which whatever statement you are trying to make is based. So the literature review is not a chore to be finished quickly. In fact, you will later realize that you got to be doing literature review from the beginning to the end of your work. Sometimes, even when you are writing the conclusion, you are also digging into the literature. So you cannot get on the to the meat of the project, or the university department, impose hoop to jump through, before you can get on with the work or the writing that you're doing. No, it is the basis of your argument, the literature review. You are juxtaposing your work in the context of what others have done. It places your research in context within the disciplinary or the sub-discipline of what you are looking at. And you are using it to demonstrate how your research improves your discipline. So it's the meat of your work. The proposal is the skeleton of your work. The literature review is the meat of the work. So why do you do a literature review? We said that the first one is so that your research will have a strong theory behind it. That's it. There is an aspect of the literature called theoretical review. The second reason why you do a literature review so that you can justify what you are doing. What do we mean by that? Because you want to prove that there are gaps in knowledge. You want to prove that what you are doing is worth doing. But you all know that you cannot adapt to something when there is nothing to adapt. There has to be a gap for you to fill. And for there to be a gap, it means that something has already been done for you to have detected a gap. And so you want to prove that there is a gap. And the only way somebody will know that there is a gap, because gap doesn't just come, it comes out of something. So you want to demonstrate that your work can improve, or your work will improve the knowledge, the field, that you are in some way. You are filling a gap. You are adding to the body of knowledge. You are adding to the understanding that people already have in your field. You want to prove that your work has not been previously contributed and that it is original. It is original. So that's why you're doing the literature review. You're doing the literature review, to indicate to the reader that what I am doing, I'm adding to the body of knowledge. And also for practical considerations, you are also doing a literature review for practical considerations to be able to demonstrate that you have read extensively in the field of research. If you have not read extensively, you will not do a literature review. Okay. The moment you do a literature review, you are speaking a language to the reader, to the professor, to the expert, that, look, I have read and I know what is already there. And I want to prove to you that I'm well read, that I have a thorough understanding of the field, that I'm intelligently going to add knowledge. And for me to add knowledge, I need to critique what others have done to be able to add the knowledge. That's why you do a literature review. So a good literature review will help you to do the following things. One, you will narrow your research because you know the broader area that is there, or you know even where others have done. So you create a limitation and a delimitation to your work. A good literature review can help you pose questions that have not been examined before. A good literature review can help you build or add to the body of knowledge, or create a knowledge base that others can even build onto. Okay, so now we know what a literature review is. We know why we have to do the literature review. Now, how do you do the literature review? How do you identify the literature? Well, there are stages. There are stages. First, you have to select a topic. And most of the time when you select a topic, the topic will be broad. And so you have to refine the topic you've selected. Then you, for example, if the moment I pick a topic related to the impact of aerodynamics on the avionics composition of an airline company, the impact of aerodynamics on the avionics composition of an airline, straight away, you will not position it into the business context. No. You won't do that. However, you're going to put this in the context of engineering or aeronautical engineering. The same way, if a person looks at the fraud detection in bank, fraud detection in bank, then you know that you are going to probably look at it from the point of a business. So you have a broad business literature to look into that. So once you have the topic in mind, it helps you to be able to. Now, if you don't have a topic in mind, you just have to start dig into that business literature to come out with something. But you got to ensure that the literature that you are looking at is relevant to your work. There are records that are retrievable. You can review and you can summarize and you can write on it. Now, there are so many things to write when it comes to the literature. And that writing is normally the difficult part. We'll look at it later. So how do you identify the literature? Where do you find research literature? Well, some of them are periodicals. But the key is scholarly journals. Now, let me share something with you. Sometimes when you're looking for scholarly journals, you will not find them. So you see the working paper rather. Because when you're looking for it at Scholar Google, you are not able to download. And so you go and look for the older version of the work. Don't do that. If you need to download the work, let somebody download it for you. Ask somebody, I want to please be able to download this. Ask somebody somewhere. Ask your supervisor that I'm begging you, I want to download this paper, but I'm not getting it. Could you please help me? Ask your colleagues. Don't go and take the working paper because that one is easily retrievable. Don't do that. Journals are the foundation of your work, not books. If you see yourself quoting books a lot, you're in trouble. Do a lot of journal citations. Occasionally, you bring books into the work. Occasionally, you cite the work of other dissertations or theses, government documents, like the Hansard or economic, World Bank particular paper number, policy reports, sometimes even existing statistics and industry reports. Yes, it's all right. Some of them are very useful. You cannot get them in a journal, so you have to get them. But the key is the scholarly journals. 90% of your work should come from there. So how do you get these scholarly journals? Where do you download? Well, if you get to the university, you see the database of the university library. The e-resources have information. You can have access off campus and on campus. You can have the databases available for you to be able to search into. You can have books online to be able to dig into. You can always ask the librarian. On the top left, bottom left here, you notice that you can ask the librarian to help you. Okay, so which journal databases can you look for? Guys, the ones you have here are not enough. I'm going to probably add some more, so take note of this. Okay. The journal databases will require your university username and password. So please take note. EBSCOhost is one. When you get there, you can have access to this. Yeah, I'm mentioning those that are here first. If I tell you those that are outside, Emerald, JSTOR, Palgrave, Sage, Science Direct, Wiley, Taylor and Francis. You also have Scopus. That is there. Scopus can help you to be able to get, a couple of information. So you have Scopus. You have which other ones do you have in mind that I haven't mentioned? Who has some in mind that I have not mentioned? There are quite a number of them. Amanda.
Prof, please, Google Scholar.
Google Scholar has all of them. That is not really a journal database.
Okay.
Asante.
So, ResearchGate.
Research what gate? No, don't go there. They would normally get it from this place and take it there. Sometimes some of them are dealing with a lot of unsighted areas.
Okay, sir.
Hello, Prof.
Yes, Amanda.
For SciSpace work.
Who?
SciSpace.
SciSpace. What is that?
Where you can get journals.
And he said the name is what?
SciSpace.
No, you're talking about journal databases.
Okay.
SciSpace, I'm yet to have heard about it. Yes, who has another one? There are quite a number. So some people here should give me a couple of them to indicate. Springer is another. Okay, Springer. I don't know whether Elsevier is another. So take note, those that we are mentioning that are not here. Springer, Elsevier, they are there. I think don't take papers from MDPI. Let me just put that online before you will ever come across them. MDPI, don't go there. You see, there are some respectable ones that you want to always be dealing with. Okay? Very, very cool ones. Emerald is very cool. But these are databases. So John Wiley is also there. Taylor and Francis is there. These are databases. They are not the journals. So they are databases for the journals. So they contain multiple journals. So Taylor and Francis.
Like what about Science Direct?
Science Direct is mentioned here already.
Science Direct.
It's on your screen. Science Direct is on your screen. We want to mention those that are not on your screen, like IEEE Explore. Okay? IEEE Explore. These are some other ones you can actually think about. I just want to give you as many of them as possible so that you don't go and get, when you are getting it from Google Scholar, that is not enough. The Google Scholar should take you to these places. That's the key. The Google Scholar should take you to those places. Did I mention Sage? Yeah, Sage. Yeah, Sage is there.
Springer link.
Springer, we've mentioned that as well. Springer, we have mentioned that. Okay. So at least you should. Sorry?
Elsevier.
Yes. We've mentioned Elsevier already. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So take note of these things and be familiar. Know about 10 of them. But the common ones, okay, Emerald, Elsevier, Science Direct, JSTOR, Springer, these are very common, okay, that you want to be aware of, you want to know about. Now, this is where you will be dealing with your work. Okay. Sometimes there are some other cool journals, databases. These are not journals, but they are journal databases, like even Scholar Google will send you to those places for you to get some of those information. Very, very important. You should know about 10 of them. 10 of these. And that will help you when you are doing your research. Now, so when you get to the BAM library, you should have your username and a password and be able to access all of these. They are basic search, and then you also have advanced search. Okay. Well, I'll tell you one of the things I do. You can go to Research Rabbit, which is like Google Scholar. But Research Rabbit is very, very good. Google Scholar is very good, but don't download from the Google Scholar. Make sure that the Google Scholar has transferred you to the journal database, and that your username and password is on your computer. So the moment you get there, you don't have to type it all the time, but automatically it picks up your username and password, and then you can get your work. There is a way you got to prepare your literature once you get the document. Guys, let me just put something here before I forget. One, when you download the PDF, save it with 4 things. 4, the name of the author, the year the paper was published, the title of the paper, and then the journal, either the acronym of the journal or the full name of the journal. See, there are some journals that we know the acronyms by heart, so we deal with the acronym. Like American Economic Review, you know clearly AER, is there. European Journal of Operational Research, easily, it's EJOR. Expert Systems or Application, ESSA. So some of them, you know them straight away, but if you don't know, write a full name. You want to save the work with the author, the year, the title. And the reason is because you will need this thing over time, and you will set your computer, and these are 500 documents you have, and you'll be struggling to find the paper. But when you have the name and all of those things saved, it always makes it easier for you to be able to get it. So save it onto your PC and categorize them. It's very important. Very important. I mean, I've had with some things with students where he says, "Doc, I want to find you the paper." And they search for the paper, they search for the paper, they search for the paper, they search for the paper. They cannot find the paper. Okay. But when you have named the paper, if it is multiple authors, you got to name it as Ohene Asare et al. So that the first name will always come, and then you can have access to it. That is how you save a document. So it is in a format like this. But once you have finished saving the document, in order for you to do a proper literature review, you got to create a literature taxonomy. Guys, this is the foundation of doing greater work. In fact, some people have done this thing that you see on your screen to the extent that now they have even come out with a paper from the literature review. So they call it literature taxonomy. or tabular taxonomy or systematic literature review. All because by putting it into this thematic analysis, they are able to know exactly what is happening. They're able to know, the methods that they are using, because there's a section on method. They're able to know which frameworks people are using, because they always summarize the framework. They're able to know the limitations and the future direction for further research that people are mentioning. You see the last column, you have direction for further research. So because you have done this, you would have known, 10 of the papers are all saying that we need to do a research on this. Then that gives you the idea of a gap. A gap. So the moment you get a paper, you've got to put it in this form of tabular taxonomy or thematic analysis. It's more than I can even tell you, because your entire literature will come from this. Oh, and by the way, when you finish, you can put this as the appendix of your thesis. Yes, you struggled. You struggled to get it. So put it as an appendix of your work, and then, you let the reader know that I have suffered to get this. And so it's no joke. So document it, because sometimes you've done some hard work behind the scenes and people don't know. This is one of those. Create a tabular taxonomy. You can use a spider diagram. You can even use mind map. Okay, there's an app called a mind map that will summarize a lot of the information on just one page visually for you, so that you can remember. For example, in the center of it, you have idea 1, idea 2, idea 3, idea 4. Then from idea 1, you got example 1, 2, A, B, C. Idea 2, you got example A, B, C, like that. You can use a spider diagram to be able to bring out the point. And Research Rabbit is very good on that, because as you are searching for it, it can create, connecting papers that is able to do this for you. See, whatever you are struggling in, someone is winning in that same thing. And so that is why learning these tips is very, very important, so that you don't make things too complex for yourself, because there are easy ways of doing things. Okay. So once you've gotten the paper, remember your author's name, okay, the initials, the title of the journal, the name of the journal, page numbers. All of these things are things that, you are summarizing from the paper, okay? And then you try and identify the research question the paper has found. In fact, you got to do this exercise even on your own for about 20 papers. What was their problem that they were handling? What was a research question that they were addressing? What framework was used by the authors? Eve says that, can we say that the theoretical framework derives from the key words? Not necessarily, to be honest with you, because sometimes you will get the key words of the paper written, but the theoretical framework is not necessarily from the keyword. The theoretical framework could come from, you can even create a theoretical framework from the methodology. You can create it from the concept. You can create it from a theory. You can even create a theoretical framework from the variables that you have gotten. Yeah, it may come from the keywords or not. All right. Identify the research methods the paper is using. Don't just look at the paper. You know what some of you do? You just go and look at the abstract of the paper. But it's not all the time these papers will also mention some things that you're looking for. For example, you will not be able to fish out the problem they were addressing or the question. You may not properly be able to detect the method they were using. They may have mentioned a broader method in the abstract, but not a key method. So you got to go through the paper. Don't rush through things. Get it? In fact, the last time I went through a paper with somebody, said, wow, doc, I read this paper like 7 times. I didn't get it. But just when you are going through it step by step, I now understand all the nitty-gritties about the paper. Yes, it takes time to do that. This is an apprenticeship that you want to appreciate. Also find out the findings of the paper. Okay, because if you know the findings of the paper, when you come to your findings, it will help you to be able to juxtapose your finding with the finding of other people. I've already told you that you should also look at the gaps for future research the paper has mentioned. Okay, the gaps that the paper has mentioned. If you are able to identify the gaps that this paper has mentioned, what it does is that it helps you. It helps you big time to be able to, in case you don't have a research topic, it helps you to be able to say, oh, wow, okay, so this is what has not been done. Oh, right, okay, then I'm going to consider this. Then I'm going to look at this. Then I'm going to examine this. Okay. And it helps you to be able to put things in perspective from that angle. It's a very, very important thing. Let's look at some practice assignment that you should look at, okay, when you are home. Okay. When you are home, go to Google Scholar and search for this paper and download it. Positioning big data analytics capabilities towards financial. I hope you guys see my screen. Let me stop sharing first. Because I think.
Doc, we were saying before you stopped.
Okay. Sorry then. So do you see this? Were you seeing this red thing?
Yes,
Yes.
please.
Oh, okay. So positioning big data analytics, configure part for Internet of Things and big data analytics acceptance for the healthcare improvement, a fuzzy set qualitative comparative analysis. Google these, search for them, download them. Optimizing sustainable resource efficiency, a fuzzy set qualitative comparative analysis of sustainable practices in SMEs. Google them. I'm going to show you something about a paper I wrote some time ago. And of course, you get some references from these. Oops. Oh, just a second. You get some references from these and work with those references in that manner. It looks like I missed some points. Okay. It looks like I missed some points, so let me guess. So it's very, very important for you to look at. So let's look at some of the things you can research on. Some of the key things that you can research on, the right topics. Okay. For example, common words that are overused. Common words, topics related to religion. These are some things you can research on. General broad topics, topics that are too narrow, controversial ones in politics. Let's take a couple of them. Suppose your topic is the impact of digital payment use by female tomato sellers in Tamale Central Market on Sundays in 2024. They said we should make it narrow, and yet this is too narrow. You cannot take a topic like this. It's too small, it's too narrow, and you're not going to get much from it. So one way to improve it is by using adoption of digital payment platforms by informal traders in Northern region. That's it. That is an improved version of the too narrow one. But you can also have one that is too broad, like the impact of technology on business. The impact of technology on business, that's too broad. You can improve it by rather saying the effect of mobile banking tech on customer satisfaction in Ghanaian rural banks. That's much better. Okay, that's much better. So whether your topic is going to be too narrow and too broad is an important angle to look at. What can influence your choice of topic? Well, for me, the most important one is your supervisor. Your supervisor can affect your research topic a lot. In fact, I just met somebody I supervise in Johannesburg University, some group of people I supervise in Johannesburg University. I'm a visiting professor there. And these guys, in fact, after he showed me, for them, they showed me their literature review. They have been writing their literature review all this while, and they never showed it to me. They were doing their own thing. And then after going through with me, they realized that they have to rewrite the entire literature review. Your supervisor could be of great help to you. And you might think that the supervisor is busy, so you don't want to bother him. Trust me, supervisors like those who are always coming to them with questions. They don't like those coming to them, but without questions, no. But they love those coming to them with questions. They stand. Of course, you can influence your topic, but they can influence the topic big time also for you. Then the gaps in the literature can also influence your topic. The data from day one, business analytics students, I'm telling you, day one, get your data. Get your data, Otong. Get your data. 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 50% of your work is based on your data. What can influence your work? The supervisor. Find out the interest of the supervisors. Sometimes you have to go to them, contact each one of them. Most of you have done this, but that is what you should have done. Find out. What about data? Okay, researchers are sometimes restricted to a particular topic because of the access. For example, when you come to me, I have data on oil, the oil industry in the world, all of it, because that's my area. I use that data. I am publishing papers from within this area. I have data on banks, the data stream, bank. So that's where you get it. So people have data that they are dealing with. Lack of access to data in a particular field of study, will really, really affect you. So sometimes you come with a topic, the supervisor says that it's not good. Why is it not good? Because the data cannot be retrievable. The interview you want to do, you will struggle to get people to respond to your interview. But when you go for secondary data, cooked data already in Excel, you are good to fly. So data is very important. You can get the data source. Sometimes you can get the data from people's work. Somebody's work, you can get the data. You can also get data from current trends that can influence your work. For example, how important a particular issue is. For example, right now, there's a lot on CD depreciation, CD appreciation, dollar depreciation. Okay? At some point, even still now, there's still some interest in COVID-19. So when the topic is of interest like that, that is when sometimes it can influence your choice. So you may come with something. I want to look at capital structure. The supervisor says, this thing has been looked at already. Like everybody has done it. What I thought, do you want to do it again? But you think that you want to do that. No. So that trend can influence your work. Sometimes the kind of work you want to do has been funded. So when it is being funded, the funding has specified an area to dig into. So the funding body will influence the work that you want to do. And of course, sometimes the research gap, the discrepancies within the literature, or the areas of study where there are reasonable gaps, so you may be looking at what you are doing, but then there is not much gap. And so the supervisor will say that go to this gap area and then go and do your research. So let's look at a research problem here. I want one of you to do the reading for me by looking at the first paragraph of this research. Okay, let's identify where is the gap, where is the problem here. Daniel Amte, are you here? Daniel Lamte has logged in.
I'm here, sir.
Daniel, how many times have you logged in? 3 times.
No, once.
But your name is appearing 3 times here.
Ah, okay. So depending on what device I'm logging on, the name changes. So I make sure that I put the official name and then the ID number there.
All right. Please read the paragraph, the first one.
All right. Corporate governance has been identified in previous studies to influence firms' financing or capital structure decisions, which also affect performance. These empirical studies tended to focus mainly on developed economies with inconclusive results. Very little, however, has been done on corporate governance in sub-Saharan Africa, especially with respect to firms' financing decisions. In Ghana, for instance, economic development and restructuring have introduced modern forms of business activity and diverse financing structures like the Ghana Stock Exchange, GSE, in the past 2 decades. And that's reference from the Ghana Stock Exchange 1993.
Continue.
Thus, firms are being exposed to more financing options than previously. It is crucial to determine how current issues in corporate governance affect the financing decisions of Ghanaian firms. This paper specifically examines the relationship between various variables of corporate governance and the capital structure decisions of firms listed on the GSE during the 6-year period, 1998 to 2003.
Good. So guys, let me ask you, apart from the research problem, what is this screen also looking at? Apart from the research problem, what is it also looking at? Eric, Kumi, are you here? Esther, Adam, what is this talking about apart from the research problem? Yes, Esther.
Doc, I'm trying to put my thoughts together.
Asante.
Okay, so I observed that there's been extensive work on developed countries, and in the paper we want to focus on developing countries like Ghana.
Okay. Apart from the research problem, what did this paper also talk about? Apart from the research problem, what did this paper also talk about? What did they discuss? Daniel.
Yes, Doc, I think it's also touched on new opportunities in terms of financing decisions in Ghanaian firms.
Oh, you are speaking specifically. I just even want a general thing. You see, I said apart from the research problem, I didn't mention what the research problem they spoke about. Okay. Apart from the general thing called research problem they have discussed, what else have you seen that this paper has mentioned? The research problem is the same as the gap in the literature. Apart from the gap in the literature, what has it also mentioned? Well, it has discussed the objective of the study. Check it, the last sentence will tell you. It has discussed the objective of the study. It says this paper examines the relationship between various variables of CG and capital structure decisions for firms. That's the objective of the study. Okay. But indeed, the research problem is where he mentions, like, who typed it today? Like Eves has typed, the very little has been done. Okay. Very little work has been done in this area. Now, the fact that very little work has been done is not about the Ghana issue here. take note. Very little has been done on corporate governance in sub-Saharan Africa. And then he said economic restructuring have introduced modern forms of business activity and diverse financial structures. So his work, his gap is okay, but it's very, very tiny. Because the gap is what is known as continental or country gap. Yeah. That is a continental or country gap. But when it is more about the conceptual framework, the philosophical framework, or the methodological extension, or for example, to say that many studies have considered using this method, but they have not considered using that method, then the gap becomes precise and concise. Okay, so take note of that. Let's look at this one too. And I want you to fish out clearly what the research gap is here. I want another person to read this. Ted Kugbe. Ted Kugbe.
Doc, the question again, please.
Please read. Read. Read what is on the screen.
Okay, so it says that the research problem illustrating a research gap. Extant literature has fairly covered studies on mobile phones usage and mobiles for development in sub-Saharan Africa. The studies include mobile phones and fishermen and farmers in Ghana by Bodi et al. 2007. Mobile phone sharing practices in Ghana, that is by Say 2009. Mobile phones and development in Nigeria by Hicks and Jagan 2007, Jagon et al. 2008. Mobile payments in Uganda, Dakombe 2009, and mobile phone ownership and social capital in Tanzania and South Africa by Goodman 2005. Despite these studies, there is a call for more studies to test earlier findings in different contexts and in different microeconomic activities in order to contribute to better understanding of the impact of mobile phones in developing economies.
Okay, so what is the real gap here? What is the gap here? What is the research gap that this paper is trying to fill? Do you identify the gap? Class rep, could you please contact those who are on the page but they have not yet joined, that they should? It will help them big time. Okay. Philip.
Prof.
Yeah, could you tell me where the gap is in this paper, in this page?
Prof, so the gap is that there's little studies that is trying to compare the different microeconomic activities within the different contexts.
Okay. Good. Salam.
So I think that there's a gap in the studies of mobile phone usage in sub-Saharan Africa, despite there being existing literature on it.
Good. All right. Okay. So again, this paper is trying to look at different aspects of mobile phones. So there are studies when it comes to mobile phones with farmers, studies of mobile phones when it comes to development, payments, ownership and societal, and they are connecting it to microeconomic activities. So the different aspect of the mobile phone. Very good. So you should be able to identify the research And to do that, it's got to be original, relevant, And one thing about a research gap is that if you look at the point number 8, the research questions will normally flow from it. It will flow from the research gap. So normally your objective and your questions will come from the gap. Take note. Your objectives and questions will come from the gap. Okay. Now, we've looked at this. The 6 steps of creating a title of the research, we've looked at that. We've also looked at the problem, identifying a broad topic and then, bringing it down. For example, a broad topic is declining employee productivity. You can pose the question from that broad topic, how can our company improve the productivity of the employees? So you can have a business problem that you want to address, or a problem that is not business related, like employee productivity in organizations. Okay. And what factors influence employee productivity? Not for a particular business, but this is a general research problem that is coming out. Okay, the next thing is to determine the scope of your work. Study one part of the company. What is the scope of the work? You don't want to study the entire part of the company. For example, if you are comparing several parts or functions of an organization, would you want to look at just several functions of the organization or one part? Do you want to study one organization, or you want to compare some 2 organizations? You want to study the entire industry or selected firms in the industry. That is demarcating the scope of the research. So your title has to be within the area of business. And from that, you should be able to now get your contribution from it. I'll come back to the contribution later on. But your contribution must always come from the problem. Take note. Your research contribution, because you've already indicated that there's a problem here, there's a gap here, there's a problem here, there's a gap here, there's an issue here. And so the reason why you are mentioning that gap is because you are going to solve it. And in solving it is your contribution. So if you know that you are not going to contribute to that problem you've stated, you don't even have to talk about it, the problem. Otherwise, it's of lower nature. So all of these things that you see on the screen are different ways of creating a contributions to a work. Let's take, for example, the second one, predictive analytics for reducing vehicle downtime in fleet management systems of public transport services. The scope is that you are applying predictive maintenance models using sensor and usage data to forecast vehicle breakdowns in municipal buses in Ghana's metropolitan cities. What is your contribution? Offering a cost saving, that's a contribution, a cost saving framework for public transport operators through a data-driven predictive maintenance and enhancement. So this is a country solution or a business solution that you are providing. You create the scope, you provide the solution. Look at the last one too, using data mining techniques to identify risk patterns in freight cargo theft across Ghana's road transport corridors. Okay. The scope is that you are focusing on applying clustering technique and association rule mining to police the logistics of data to identify hotspots and cargo types that are most prone to theft. So that is it. So sometimes somebody says, why are you not looking at this one rather? I say, no, that's not my scope. My scope is this. And be clear and indicate that your scope. Now, we've looked at most of the things that will influence the researcher, but at the end of the day, you are the one in charge. You will be the superpower in all of your research. Look, the supervisor can say so many things. At the end of the day, the supervisor is not the one who is going to defend your research. Your research will be defended purely by you and you alone. So it's important that you understand, you take care, even if the supervisor says something. That's why it's important to always ask the supervisor questions. Because if you don't ask the supervisor questions and you just take what he's saying, when you don't understand, you will be the one to defend the work. That is critical. Okay, so the gap is, the reason why we're spending a lot on this gap is that your gap must stand out. It must stand out. You will want to use linkers to fish out the gap because the potential contribution of the work lies in the research gap. And so don't just write, but then indicate that gap number 1 is this, gap number 2 is this, gap number 3 is this, and gap number 4 is that. Your gap will help you to always come out with contribution. And of course, it will also help you to generate a research question. But it's important for you to clear yourself at this stage. Why do you think I have to look at your work? Why do you think I have to read your research? Always sell. You are selling an idea. You are talk to yourself. In fact, do a peer review presentation among yourself and tell yourself, why do we think that the person reading my paper should read the paper? This thing has come from the beginning. Are you just duplicating other people's effort? Are you just taking somebody's work and repeating it and say that it's not in Ghana, it's not in Ghana, it's not been done in Nigeria, it's not been done in Sub-Saharan Africa, and therefore you think you are doing the great work? Your contribution that you are actually building. If somebody were not in Ghana and the person were to pick up your work in Sweden or in Norway or in Hawaii, what would you think will make that person become interested in your work? You know, instead of localizing it only as Ghana. Because a lot of people might not even know your country. But then the topic of interest, why should somebody, is there any value or something new to be learned or discovered? Have you explained that? Have you clearly elucidated that point? That is it. That's why the person would want to be looking at. So what are the gaps? Issue gap. Sometimes it's like conceptual gap. Okay? An issue which is less discussed, less represented, very little known is a gap. But you see, because it's a gap, you have to state that another gap this study examines is this. You got to mention it. Another gap, okay? Another problem this study tries to, investigate. Another issue the study tries to investigate. Be specific and let the reader know that you are talking about the issue. Another is a theoretical gap or theory gap. Okay. If you have a theory gap that people are actually working on, you have to indicate that you are dealing with a theory gap. Something that is less represented in the literature. Theory gaps are difficult, guys. They can exist when current theories or conceptual models are inadequate. Okay, so when you are doing a theory gap, be clear with it. Another is methodological gap. I love that a lot. The methodological gap, where people in the area have been using some methodologies, but they've not incorporated random forest. They've not used decision trees. They've not used forecasting method, LSTM, long short-term memory. They've not used, autoregressive integrated moving average. They've not used it. They've not used lasso regression. They are always using OLS. They are not using lasso regression. They are not using ridge regression. They are not using elastic net regression. And so you are bringing these methods to, as you're extending the use of the OLS, ordinary least squares linear regression, to these other areas. Even non-linear regression, they've not considered some of this. And so you want to look at it. They've not considered support vector machines. They've not applied, any of those other things, and you are looking at that is a methodological gap. It's not the same as a context gap, because a context gap is looking at it from geographic region. The thing has not been discussed much, in a particular geographic region. Some of you like it, but most of you like it a lot. And you can add all of these gaps together in one document. There's no problem with that. So these are the gaps that you want to consider. How do you identify the gaps? I've used words like future direction for further research. It's a very important way to consider those gaps. If you want to have a gap, these are the ways. You see, I'm speaking to you right now as if you are doing your research. I'm not teaching you right now as if this is a course, but I'm teaching you as if you are doing a research. So take note of that. And class rep, those of you have made you, can you mute those that are making noises? Because so many people are making noises and they don't even know that they are making noises. All right. So let's go and look at identifying the gaps, okay, in this text. I want one of you to do this reading and then let's identify the gaps that has been mentioned in this context. Elsa, could you read what is on the screen?
Okay, Doc. Triggers of entrepreneurship among creative consumers. Empirical studies have shown that 10.7% of all startups and 46.6% of innovative startups that survived to their 5th year, created in the United States in 2004, were founded by users Shah, Winston, Smith, and Reedy, 2011. Other studies found that 29% of US-based medical device startups and 84% of large and small firms in the juvenile products industries, 263 firms created between 1980 and 2007, were founded by users, physicians in the first case, and parents, babysitters, and caregivers in the second. Chatterjee, 2011, Shah et al., 2011, Shah and Tripsas, 2011, Shah and Tripsas, 2016. Over the past 10 years, these empirical patterns highlighted the magnitude and importance of user entrepreneurship for the industrial system. Winston, Smith, and Shah, 2014. However, as firm founders and users, in contrast with professional users, remain relatively unexplored by scholars, even though the Kaufman Firm survey, conducted among a sample of 5,000 startups launched in 2004, showed that 40% of user entrepreneur firms were created by end-user entrepreneurs. Shah et al., 2011. This exploratory studies focuses exclusively on consumer entrepreneur and aims to extend our knowledge of this unconventional but growing form of production.
Excellent. Very good. Very good. So where is the gap in this paper, in this paragraph? Where is the gap? Where do you, oh, by the way, this paper has done some great work. What is one thing that stands out that you can see? When I mention it, you'll get it. But who can tell me one thing that stands out that you want to learn from when you are writing your own dissertation? What is one thing you can see that this paper is not joking with? Who spots something that this paper is doing very well with it? Bernice Perpetua. Bernice.
Yeah, please, referencing.
Referencing, very good. Very good. Very, very good. You saw it. The first sentence is referenced. First sentence. And it was not just referenced. Second sentence with facts and figures was referenced. Not once, not 2 references, not 3 references, but 4. Guys, get used to these things. Get used to them, I implore you. So referencing is critical in your work. Don't say that, oh, when I reference, they will think that it's not coming from my head. No. In fact, the more you reference, the more they think that it's coming from your head. Okay, so now where is the gap here? Who can identify the gaps that this paper has mentioned? You can tell me the first gap. Oh, by the way, this was an exam question. Okay, where you have to identify, 2 gaps in this study. So you can tell me the first gap in this. Suppose you have this in an exam and you're supposed to fish out the first gap. Where is the first gap? Here. Eunice Namomo Taki. Eunice Taki.
Yes, sir.
Good. Tell us.
Okay, so the second paragraph, we see, however, as firm founders and users, in contrast with professional users, remain relatively unexplored by scholars. So those areas that were unexplored, that's the gap.
So what is the area that is unexplored that he's talking about? What is the area that is explored and what is the area that is not explored?
The
Salom.
Yeah, so I think the area that is explored is user entrepreneurship, and the one that is instead of end user.
Excellent. Excellent. That means you have an understanding. You see, you just put it in your own words. So end user entrepreneurs has not been explored. User entrepreneurship has been explored. And that is it. You see, your ability to read the paper, understand what the paper is saying, and put it in your words like I asked you and you answered, that is what indicates to the reader that you know your stuff. Now, if you use ChatGPT is not going to be able to address this part of the question I just asked. It's very, very important. And the fact that you may have just seen the word however and the word unexplored, that alone does not justify that you have an understanding of the gap. Because one person will explain by copying that sentence, that's 0. But another will explain why that's the clear understanding from that sentence. Okay. The gap. The gap is that end user entrepreneurship has not been that much explored, unlike user. That is a perfect way to put the point. So guys, note how these things are done. Note how gaps are actually documented. Let's go to another one. This is another one. I want you to identify the gap in this. Okay. But first, let's read. Let me get someone who is going to do this reading for us. Hey, Father Samuel. If you have not spoken, just be ready.
Hello. Okay, so in the field of consumer sporting goods, Shah and Trippers 2016 developed a theoretical model to explain when creative users decide to found or not found a film to commercialize their own innovation. They identified 3 main factors that accelerate the user innovator's entrepreneurship process. When they have access to complementary assets, when they possess informational advantages, enabling them to uniquely identify opportunities that established firms would underestimate, and when the rent from entrepreneurial activity exceed the opportunity cost of their time. The initial work opens a research avenue for further investigation, since the authors focus on organizational time factors rather than private factors in the terms of life stages. To extend Shah and Trippers' first assumption and to explore why creative consumers decide to become entrepreneurs, we aim to answer the 3 following research questions. What mechanism triggers creative consumers to become entrepreneurs? What are the pathway of end-user entrepreneurship? Are there more favorable times or periods of life for end users to undertake entrepreneurial ventures?
Thank you. So, based on this, what would you say was the first gap that this paper identifies? What is the first gap this paper identifies? Monica Seto, what is the first gap?
The first gap was that most of the research was focused on organizational time factors rather than private factors.
So what is the gap here?
So this one is supposed to try and focus on private factors that determine why and
I want you to say it like it's a gap.
Private factors that determine why end users begin entrepreneurship process.
Yeah, that was like a sentence. There's nothing in that sentence that shows that you have spoken about a gap. Let the reader know, okay, like there is no study, there is less study, there are few study. That's what I mean. Make it like
Okay. So there are less studies on private factors that determine how end users begin entrepreneurship processes. Is that clear?
Okay.
Yeah.
Who wants to add something to this? Where is a gap here? There's a gap. Benis. Oh, Benis. Benis, I've called it today, right? Bright Ohimen. Bright Ohimen. Bright Ohimen. Bright Ohimen. Yeah. Yeah, Solomon, I'll come to you.
So I think it is a theoretical gap, because if you look at the last sentence of the first paragraph highlighted in green, it states that the model that has been said does not fully account for why creative consumers kind of transition into entrepreneurship. So I think there's a theoretical gap there.
Good, conceptual gap.
Yeah.
Good. All right. So that's it. That's it. Your capacity to identify these gaps are very important, because then you can learn from that to identify this. Let's go to the third one. Okay. The third one, if you look at it, this one was a literature review gap. Okay. This one was a real research problem. But the third one is about a direction for further research. I want someone to do that reading. Ezekiel Bako, can you read? Ezekiel. Ezekiel, are you there? Who will do the reading?
So I'll read. This is Isaac.
Okay, continue, Isaac.
Identifying research gaps in the text. Triggers of entrepreneurship among creative consumers. Future research directions. Our research has also limitations that offer clear opportunities for future research. First, a central limitation of this survey is that it is focused only on end user and not professional entrepreneurs. Our interviews were conducted with 20 end users who became entrepreneurs. A strong complementary study will replicate this same qualitative survey with 2 samples, end users and professional user entrepreneurs, to establish a clear comparison between both entrepreneurial processes. Second, current research, including ours, analyzes the end user entrepreneurship process ex post. A deeper understanding and reports could be made using ethnographic and longitudinal methodologies that are more appropriate to exploring an ongoing process, as well as quantitative method to identify interesting entrepreneurship patterns and determinants such as age, gender, education, and work trajectory. Third, our research explores user entrepreneurship in founding for-profit firms. A promising approach would be to explore in more detail other forms of end-user entrepreneurship, ranging from those that diffuse innovations freely through voluntary sectors, non-governmental organizations, and non-profit charities, to those using hybrid models with a combination of charitable work and commercial activities. These investigations would extend knowledge about social entrepreneurship and produce a better understanding of collective end user entrepreneurship. That is, when the firm foundation process is undertaken by more than one end user entrepreneur. Finally, many of our informants reveal that they do not consider themselves as entrepreneurs. This certainly indicates a deep identity opposition between the user consumer and the entrepreneur that merits research attention.
Good. How many gaps are identified in this paper? Can tell us. How many gaps?
4.
4. Very good. 4. But these gaps that have been identified in this paper, were they gaps that this paper is actually going to research into them? Are they gaps that this paper researched into them?
No, sir. They were.
That?
So it was rather saying other areas or additional work that needs to be done to complement the work that they have done.
Good. So normally, if you want a research topic, these are some areas where you can get your topic because it is their direction for further research. So it becomes your further research or your research. Yeah. And it becomes your gap that you will now use to actually indicate the work. Okay. So gaps may be communicated as missing issues in the literature, as limited discussions in the literature, conflicts within theories, missing theoretical models, conflicts within empirical applications, mixed previous empirical results. For example, some results say that the relationship is positive. Others say that the relationship, for example, just last week, I was doing some research and I showed somebody the importance of corruption. The person says, corruption too, there is importance. I say, yes. Okay. The person doesn't believe, this is a professor, he doesn't believe me at all. And then I had to give him references of the papers and the papers that actually have indicated that. He was so babahaged to actually come to see that indeed there are significant benefits of corruption. So we know that corruption is bad, but then there are good sides of corruption. And then some people would also tell you that there's so mixed previous empirical results, where the results you can't really see where it is going. You can come and then endorse your portion. That is how you can get your gap. Now, at this stage, to end, I'm going to give you a paper here that I wrote sometime in the energy economics. Okay. When I wrote this paper, I just want to show you this paper and the potential gaps that you could identify, which then lead to the contributions of the work, okay, which would then lead to, what do you call it? It would then lead to, other things. So I think one of you was asking whether you can use these keywords to be able to make up the point. And I think I've answered that point that no, it's not the only one that you can use to make up the point. Okay, let's go to here. I wanted to also look at how the paper has been documented in terms of citations. For example, about 2 billion petroleums are traded every day, making petroleum the single largest item in the balance of payment and exchange rate. It is cited. Economies of susceptible economies are prone to oil supply and price volatility as a result of strong dependence on oil. Again, 2 citations are made. This is probably because state interventions in the form of NOCs. That I know it myself, so I put that there. But then this next one will require citation because there is a date that you are bringing. And so it comes with citation. Okay, let me just jump here and go to the real deal. This is a point here. Though this view, what view? Okay. So I make a point here that for firms like ExxonMobil, Chevron, Total, they are privately multinational companies. From the theoretical foundations of eclectic paradigm, this is a theory, and portfolio diversification theory. Again, you can see that they are all being cited. Multinationality or multinational operations bring benefits. Again, I cite. And this paper, which I cited, they have just made that point, but they never have done an empiricism of it. That is where the gap begins here, that this view that multinational companies improve performance is quite predominant in theory. More empirical testing of this view in petroleum is needed. And as at the time I was talking, there isn't empirical testing of that. Okay, so that was a gap. Next one. From the evidence gathered, still on the gap, only Al-Obadan and Scully have explored the performance differences between multinationals and local companies. So again, only one study. Now, when you bring only one study like that, you got to critique that one study. So you come with the next sentence. However, because if that one study alone has done it, then what's the big deal? No. Their study does not consider efficiency differences between state-owned multinationals and private-owned multinationals. In other words, even though they have done the work, they did not bring multinationality into the picture. And more criticism. Also, their study does not consider whether going multinational can make a state company more efficient. So you punch 2 holes in the paper. Now, for you to be able to say that, you must have read that paper into it. So there's a more explanations here. Then you come to the contributions here. I wanted to just learn some few things here. The contribution of this study are relevant to both literature and policy. Yes, Solace.
Hello, Prof. Please, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I remember at the beginning of the lecture, you said we shouldn't make our study broad. We should narrow it down. It should be specific.
Yeah.
So what if the study was done narrowly, like they were specific on a specific age? He touched on a specific area to center his research on, and now we are seeing them as gaps. I don't see how it works here.
I don't get you.
Okay, for example, if I want to center my research on Africa alone, Okay, I'm being specific that this is the area in which I want to center my research. Okay, and then I do just that. And then probably someone comes to read my work and identifies that as a gap, because that is how I'm seeing what we are doing right now. Do you get me? Yes. So if this is what someone has said they are going to do specifically, why would we have to say that it's a gap? Because the person was probably narrow in their research. Do you get me?
You mean a person was narrow and didn't consider something?
Yes.
And because he didn't consider something, we see that as a gap.
As a gap, yes.
Yeah, because the thing is that within the time frame you have, okay, somebody not doing something doesn't mean that the paper was bad. It was still good paper. That's why it was published, isn't it?
Yes.
That's why it was published, and you are saying that there is a gap in their work. It's just that within the time that you are doing, they can't add this one to it. They can only focus on this. Now, if you also make it too narrow, now that too narrow, you'll be surprised that you don't even get data to prove the point. So I'm saying that too narrow means that you don't even have data to prove the point. I want to look at, you want to look at the factors that lead to divorce within the family of, your mother and your father.
Hey, say.
I'm just giving you it's too narrow. Because whatever is happening between your mother and your father, it may not be generalizable. You cannot generalize it. So that is what we mean by it's too narrow. So that one, you don't even have to publish it at all. It will not be accepted.
Okay.
But if you gather more samples, so you take this family, that family, that family, that family, then you get a sample where the same thing is happening. Now you have a story. Now you have a paper. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Now, so this paper I showed you, even though we've done some great work in the paper, towards the end, I want you to just see what we said. I said that whereas this study has provided very insightful points on upstream oil industry, a more complete picture will be presented if both upstream and downstream. So I was criticizing my own work. Yes, Patience.
No, please, it's a follow-up question on the clarification Solis was seeking. At a point in the slides, we were discussing, we're trying to differentiate a topic being narrow, and then when it was revised, the revised version captured as what it should be. But then there was this particular one focusing on the use of the adoption of digital payment platforms. And it's the first one, which was termed as being narrow, had a focus on
the first one, which
was on transaction internally on Sunday. Yes, there was this one focusing on transaction internally on internally marketing. Yes, but the revised one captured it as adoption of digital platform payments, for informal markets or something. But I am thinking that I want to find out if that is also not ambiguous or too broad.
No, it's not too broad.
If it's in the northern region, then doesn't that throw the researcher off board? Like all markets in terms, I thought the first one was rather being specific. Maybe the terms that were not coined to make it conclusive or more formal, but then I thought that was rather well narrowed and not looking ambiguous. I don't know if I'm.
So here's the thing. If you have that research you spoke about, if you have that question of a research that is not broad, so narrow, it simply means that the data, because remember, he was talking about tomato seller farmers. You remember?
Yes, Prof.
Now, your work on tomato farmers alone is not enough. It's not enough to be able to make it even generalizable. So that is what was making it. It was a whole lot of things. And then you're talking about Sunday. What about the other days?
What if that was the focus of the researcher?
If the focus of this thing was on the researcher, it makes the research not generalizable. That's the point. It makes it not generalizable because your homework, we have a lot of gaps. For example, you have a lot of days. And it's not like the thing is not happening every other day. It's happening every other day. So why are you then focusing on Sunday? Why are you then focusing on tomato sellers? What is making one actually do that? There must be a very strong reason why you want to do that.
Exactly my point. So then,
if there is,
if there must be a strong reason, that's what the person wants to prove.
But you and I know that.
Why it's a narrow, that is considered as being narrow.
But you don't know the topic that the person did. The person decided to even collect data. The person could not even get data for it.
Okay.
Now you are beginning to now get the essence why it was too narrow. Because some days they were not even going to market. So I'm just saying that I don't have to give more details to you to be able to know that, okay, now I understand why it was too narrow. But normally with your research, your supervisor will know enough to tell you that, no, this is too narrow. For example, you want to examine stress level among lecturers. Instead of saying that among lecturers in the University of Ghana, even though you're not going to interview all lecturers in the University of Ghana, it's better to say that you're going to do it among lecturers in the University of Ghana, and then take lecturers in business school, in science department, in agri department, in nursing department, in medical school. Pick a sample of lecturers in all departments, than to say that among lecturers in the University of Ghana and go and take only business school lecturers.
Okay.
Or than to say that I want to do the stress level test on people in finance department of the University of Ghana. Again, you're making it, or lecturers stress level of lecturers in finance department with particular emphasis on research in stock market. What at all that is making you make the thing so tiny looking? How many people are you going to get to be able to make your work interesting? No, nothing. So there is something about research where your subject, your sample size, your subject in question, there must be a lot. There must be a lot. Your data acquisition must be a lot. And normally when the research is too narrow like that, you don't get data, normally. And that is why we say that we don't want it to be too narrow. All right, I hope you get a point.
Yes, so, I do. Thank you.
When you look at this paper, towards the end, it says that further research, okay? So the paper is mentioning further research. In fact, this paper, after I wrote this paper, some of these further researches, we have even written them already. We took some of these further research and went ahead and made papers out of them. I think 3 other papers out of them. Yes, Sophia.
Thank you, Prof. So, for clarity, if your research is focusing on the stress level of business analytics students of the University of Ghana, will that also be too narrow? Like first-year business analytics students, checking the stress level. would that also be too narrow?
You can just say business analytics students. It's okay.
Okay.
And in that case, you can get, all of them, because even if you don't get first year, you can get second year or third year or something.
Okay, thank you.
All right. All right, so this one just looked at one federal research, which became a topic. Another one is this, another federal research, because it says additionally, in the study, two important, and normally these are towards the end, two important issues, ownership and multinational operations, were critically assessed. However, so it's like you're criticizing your own work. Other environmental factors may have even stronger impact on the performance efficiency. The efficiency scores, what are they? Then he mentions them. One is degree of vertical integration. Two, firm size, okay? And then on and on and on. So by making these points, you are able to, and again, in subsequent paper, we took those things and I dealt with them as well. So when you're looking for a gap, these are some ways you can get a gap. And when you're getting to the end of your work, these are some ways you can write your direction for further research. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of the entire caboodle. If you have a question, please, you can ask your final question now.